Welcome to Startup Grind Chilliwack. I'm so happy you could be here. For those of you that are not familiar, Startup Grind is a global movement. There are now more than 600 chapters worldwide. And so Startup Grind Chilliwack is just one of those, and it's an interconnected network of local startup grind communities. And there's three things we do. It's all about making friends, giving first, and helping others. And those are the three basic values of Startup Grind at a global level, and we practice that here in Chilliwack. We've got some wonderful sponsors for 2020. On the gold sponsor level, we have the Chilliwack Economic Partners. Thank you, Brian Coombs and company. And also the Chilliwack Innovation Network, which is a new addition for this year. And joining us again for the coming year is the UFV. So let's hear it for our sponsors. They keep the beer flowing and the pizza coming, and the ticket price is low. On the partner side, we've got Cowork Chilliwack, Currency Marketing, Wisebox, and Around Chilliwack. So let's hear it for our partners. And if you are taking photos and posting them to the interwebs, use the hashtag StartupGrind. We really appreciate it. And without further ado, I would love to invite our wonderful guest, Dr. Brian Minter. He's saying, don't call me that. But everybody on their feet, and let's give Brian Minter a warm Startup Grind Chilliwack welcome.
Okay. Hi, Tim.
Yes.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start by congratulating you on 50 years as the owner of Minter Country Gardens.
Well, thank you, Tim. But we always do that. I think it's Brian. It's our family, my wife in particular, that we always work together. So it's the two of us.
So if you think back, you and Faye obviously were married and came into this family business. Can you tell us about the origin story of how you got involved with Minter Country Gardens?
Well, back in the early days, I guess probably in the late 40s, and my father, after the Second World War, came back and wanted he was very interested in the horticultural industry. Langley Greenhouses was a huge operation at that time. He worked in Langley Greenhouses and had training before the war and went back there afterwards. And my grandfather had a dairy farm, and he wanted no part of the dairy farm. He was really interested in horticulture, and with a partner from Langley Greenhouses, started Country Garden. And it was a flower shop, one of the first ones in the community. And actually, Langley Greenhouses had a flower shop as well. They kind of went in competition to them because they had a different vision.
Okay.
And so that worked out well. It was great. There was no, and just sort of interesting things here, there was no growers in Chilliwack at that time. So he grew a lot of the things on 3rd Avenue, believe it, that's where we lived. That's where he actually had a small greenhouse and tried to grow everything. But you needed, for the floral industry, you needed a lot of plants all the time. So he would leave at about 10 or 11 o'clock at night on the old highway, 2.5 hours to Vancouver, sleep in his little Austin van, and wait till 6 o'clock till the auction opened, get his flowers, and come back to Chilliwack. He did that on a regular basis.
Wow.
And so
as a kid growing up, were you working for your dad at all?
Well, at that point, I was too young to work. This is my early memories. But then he decided this is really difficult, so he built he built a greenhouse on Yonge Street, or actually on Hope River Road, where we had about 3 acres there. And it was one of the early greenhouses in this particular area, all taken down from a friend of his. It was all wood and glass, and so it was built quite differently in those days. And so he started growing roses and carnations and chrysanthemums and things that we'd use in the floral industry. And it was a lot of very hard work. You would, when you grew that, you'd have to take the soil out of these beds after every crop, and we'd sterilize. It was a big old-fashioned boiler. It was just huge.
Wow.
We'd cover the thing and sterilize the soil and do new crops. And we used to, obviously we had to grow more than we could. we'd meet the train at 8 o'clock at night. I remember as a little kid,
Okay.
we'd pick flowers and bundle them up and put them in the train.
So I
And,
guess Third Avenue is not that far, right?
well, we were on Hope River by this time.
Okay, got it.
And so we'd meet the train and all his customers in Williams Lake and Prince George and all the way along the train route.
So was he supplying garden shops, essentially?
Flower shops at that time.
Flower shops, okay.
Yes,
And so was
exactly.
it kind of a wholesale business then?
It was wholesale plus growing for ourselves. And so it was just a very interesting time. A lot of hard work, but he grew absolutely amazing flowers that was one of the first. And he also had field crops he would grow, back in the early days. So this happens at a big scale right now, but it was early times. And so
is this around like 1950?
That's right.
55?
Yeah, but getting into the late 50s and 60s. And I graduated from high school at that time and went to...
So were you a Chilliwack grad?
I was the
Chilliwack Senior Secondary?
Central School.
Okay.
And actually we had a reunion this past summer. And,
wow.
So I was asked to come back and talk about how important that school was in my life, which was huge. And then junior high, then senior high, and that was my place. Senior high was it was my most wonderful time in terms of schooling.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, the business evolved to the point where we had a flower shop, and it came to the point where, he asked, "Do you want to take over the business?" And I just, had worked so hard for so long, as all of us did, and I just didn't see a future in that business. That's something, and which is probably family, relationship. So I wanted to go to university, and so I did. I had a passion for English.
I think that's like an entrepreneur's dream to have it passed down to his kids.
It
But many
is.
of the kids are like, I do not want this life sentence, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't bad. There was all great parts to it as well, but it was long hours, hard work, and challenging. And so I went to university and took English, and then I had a wonderful teacher there, Mrs. Belcher, who in second year English said, "Brian, we got to put you in honors English. You seem to have a passion for it." So very grateful for her for that. And unfortunately, she was murdered by her husband
goodness.
on the Orient Express. It was a big international
Holy cow.
crime scene. So she was an amazing person. So things that happen in your life, and so I got into the honors program, and absolutely loved it. And it was really challenging and difficult. I'm not that smart, so for me especially. But we got into a group of us just formed to be able to do that, because one course, your only mark all year, was a 3-hour exam, oral exam given by 3 professors.
Wow.
So we collaborated, and we each we had the books that we had to learn and know, so we collaborated all through that, and made some wonderful relationships and friends. And anyway, we all got through, we all graduated with an honors degree. And
where was that?
And gosh, that was in the late 60s, early 70s.
And what university?
Oh, University BC.
Got it.
Yeah, no,
Got
it was a great university at the time, and still is. And then for some strange reason, a number of friends said, you should try law. They're having a law exam, and there was 1,500 applicants to get into 150 spaces, and
wow.
I'm not that bright. So anyway, I wrote the exam, and it was one of those funny things. You know what the answer should be, but for law, it's exactly the opposite. And seriously, so I gave all the wrong answers, and I was one of the 150 selected. So
So at this point, you had moved to Vancouver, living on...
But we came back in the summertime.
Got it.
To work, both Faye and I, we got married during that period. And
so you married quite young, obviously.
Yeah, we did, yeah. We were
How old were you?
both 14. Just kidding. I was, I think, 19, and she was 17.
Holy cow.
And so...
I don't even know if that's legal anymore.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you. So we went to university, and
I'm not questioning that you have the paperwork.
Oh, I'm just yeah, you do, yeah. We had no kids for 5 years, so there you go.
Okay.
The issue came up because of this law thing, a new career, and I said to my dad, I said, I really don't want to pursue in the business. I'd like to go into law. I think that's something I really might love doing, and. He said,
was that like an ongoing, every summer you'd come back?
No,
Brian,
once I
are you
wrote the
ready?
exam, no, I
But
had
I mean,
a
as you
chance
were
to
going
get into
to
the
get
career.
your degree, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, Brian,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
thinking about maybe taking over the business?
He was hoping that I would graduate from English and realize that wasn't that important,
Got it.
so just come back to work. And
fair enough.
so, but he, and of course, when work, a lot of people would not realize this, but when we had a big event, like a major funeral in the community or whatever, we would drive back after class and after Faye was working. We'd drive back at night, work all the way through the night, and go back to Vancouver in the morning and go back to class. And
right,
that was
of course, you wouldn't think that when that happens, obviously,
you just
flowers
do that.
are needed.
It's family, it's important, so you do those things. And so anyway, that was our life to the point. And he said, finally, well, if you're not going to come back, we're going to sell the flower shop. And fortunately, there was some great people in town we had a relationship with, and they bought the flower shop. And then we had the garden center. And he said, would you please take a year out to help me sell the greenhouse range and so on, which is a little difficult. And so I said, sure, we'll do that. So I gave up the law career, and then I said, can I come back? And they said no. So here's your one shot, kid. So we had to do something at that point. So Faye and I went down to the States and visited a lot of older folks in the nursery industry and said, do you see a future here? What do you think about this industry? And incredibly gracious people, kind people, insightful people. And so they gave us a better sense. And so we started to survive. We started a garden center.
Okay.
And as we started, we had a milk carton was our till. And it was,
wow.
It was like a wow. And but fortunately, it was the time where garden centers worldwide had just begun. And in Europe, they were a little bit ahead. And so it was just a golden opportunity to grow. And we were very fortunate, had lots of wonderful customers and wonderful folks who worked with us. And so the business grew very, very quickly. We expanded. And so everything was, again, a lot of hard work, but you really benefit and love the particular customers. And the one thing I always remember about this business is the fact that it's universal. Everybody loves it. People from all different walks of life all garden. And it was a place that people met. And you got to meet them all. And whether it be, a council member, a lawyer, a fellow, who owns his own business. It was just, and ladies as well. It was great diversity. And to be able to work with all those people and learn from them and build relationships with them, that was probably the most amazing thing we could possibly do. And then...
so I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
I'm really curious
What was the question again?
Exactly. I'm just going to get a word in edgewise here and just let you go.
Yeah.
But I'm super curious about the dynamics of a multi-generational business. Did your dad just say, here you go, Brian and Faye, run with it? Or was he still hanging around? Was it a slow transition? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, he was amazing. He was a very good grower, very experienced, and so he helped grow all the material that we were selling, because now the volumes increased and the diversity we were doing increased, and so he was absolutely amazing, and until one day in his late 60s, he just put the hose down and there was no problem. He said, I'm done now. So that was a big loss, because he would take, deliveries. We had relationships with other people, and he really did so much for us in so many different ways. So that was kind of, and it came to a point, like in all families, where the offspring would have a different vision.
Right.
And so that's where that transition took place. And it
your
was
dad
very
would have
amicable.
had quite a reputation, obviously, in the industry. Did you feel
he
like
did.
you were under that shadow or emerging from it?
He was always very kind. The people that mentored him and worked with him, he would always bring me along and make sure that I was aware. He taught me so many different things and expanded my view from his world at that particular time. And so it really gave me a sense. So it was an easy transition. There wasn't any conflict, and so I picked up a lot of those ideas and concepts from him, and we moved forward very quickly. But the fortunate thing is, you could be an absolute idiot and a poor business person, but the garden center industry began at that time.
Right.
And it just flourished, and it was timing is everything. That was the wonderful time to be able to start a garden center. That
So
changed in the 80s, but
with an English degree and aspirations for a law degree,
Yep.
what the heck did you know about business?
Just watching my father grow up, and we worked very hard to sell and wholesale flowers, and And the flower business itself is, I would take, as a young person, as soon as I was able to drive and I was 16, I would take deliveries after school.
Right.
And so you get to meet people, and you sort of saw that relationship, how, from the original product, how the product was designed and put together, and it was, sent out to various communities, and funny stories, but funeral work and back in those days was very different. When people passed away, there was no flowers by request thing. It was people sent flowers. But a beautiful big spray like this sent out would be $5, maybe
Wow.
$6 or $7.50. And it was remarkable. Everybody worked very hard to create this beautiful stuff. But sometimes there'd be, 150, 250 sprays at one funeral. Because it was inexpensive enough that everybody said, I want to pay tribute to my friends or family. And so we would often work with the funeral home. They'd asked us for their help, is we would make all the sprays and put them in the church and or at the, wherever we'd be. And they said, now we have to get them to the cemetery. And so what we would do is go to the church when everybody left, and they would try and stall the family and so on. And so we would take all these beautiful pieces, because we didn't want them damaged. It was very important to people. Put them in our truck and then drive like crazy to the the cemetery. Wow. Lay them all out beautifully so people could see what they want, and then it was all ready for the family. Just little things that you never would do today, but it's just an interesting aspect to
For
how,
sure.
Yeah.
It's just getting it done.
Yeah.
And so this transition, you're now fully up to speed. The garden center's going. And somewhere along the way, you got the crazy notion that you should buy some acreage out towards Bridal Falls and do a show garden.
Yep.
Where did that idea come from? And talk to me about how it came together.
Okay, well, for Christmas dinner, my wife's parents lived in Harrison Hot Springs, so we were on the way out to Harrison Hot Springs, and truthfully, we just drove off the main road and looked at the site, and I said to Faye, what a beautiful spot for a garden. And so, that was sort of that, had Christmas dinner. And Faye's dad, being a son-in-law, maybe not that bright, but he actually approached the lady and said, would you be interested in selling? And so that whole process began, and it just seemed like a wonderful thing to be able to do. I was aware of Butchart Gardens and how amazing that place is, and we thought that what a wonderful thing to do for the community, and that would be kind of a neat thing. So we did buy the property, and our business was successful, so we're able to do that. And then as we got a lot more along the way and decided the things that were going to have to be done to be able to do that, and the creativity, hiring architects and so on, getting approvals, that was another issue. But we tried to get at this point here. We had a clearer vision of where we wanted to go, and so we finally put a package together. We used our accountants, who were very good at the time, so we had a presentation to make to a bank, and we were actually turned down by every major bank in our country, and except for one bank who we had a relationship with the manager. Our own bank said, go away, we're not interested, but the other company actually got it through Vancouver. Anything over $1 million in those days had to go to Toronto, and so they followed suit and said, no, you can't do it, because we don't believe this is a viable project. So we determined to keep going. We didn't stop. We just, this is going to happen. And Bernie Proft, who had just passed away this past year, who was the manager of the local credit union, Bernie said, Brian, come and talk to us here, because we think we have something that's really important for the community. And so they gave us not what we asked for, but less than we asked for, to be able to get going. And never forgotten his faith in us to be able to do that. And so what we did is we got everything up and running as best we could, and we realized really that we knew that we needed more. We went back to them, and it was a tough sell to his board, but he believed in us. And so we were able to get the financing for that. And just for those of you who are used to the 2% interest rate now, our loan was 17.5%.
Wow.
And the operating loan was 22.5%. And so that,
So to put that into perspective, for a $1 million loan,
Yep.
you're paying $170,000 in interest every year.
Absolutely. We counted, it was almost getting up to a point of $1,000 a day in interest.
Wow.
And so that was a struggle for our business, but we were fortunate to be able to keep it going. And the gardens, it was a struggle. It was the one thing we knew right away is that it wasn't a destination. That was the problem.
Right.
Any place you go to stop, the Okanagan or Victoria, for example, you stop. Now we look for things to do. So we weren't a destination. We had to work harder to be able to do that. Part of the solution was finding bus tours that would come on a regular basis. It worked. We just spent a lot of time going to companies and saying we have a wonderful place for you to stop on tour away or from Vancouver, and so it was a struggle. And then eventually, thought we shouldn't do weddings, and we finally got into weddings, and that was something that worked out very, very well.
Yeah, because you had the
People loved that.
Trillium restaurant
We built,
and
so
banquet
then we
center.
spent another $1 million building.
Wow. I'm curious.
So
I'm curious, the dynamics between you and your wife, being a family business, is Faye the voice of reason and you're lean-in visionary, or what roles do you play in that relationship?
That's pretty much the way. I'm hard to control, but she's done it amazingly. But, without her, honestly, her business savvy, she went to business school and was able to, balance the, everything that was happening. It was very hard on all of us, and Faye's mom and dad actually were great too. They moved out to the property and did a lot of the work out there. But is for 40 years it was incredibly stressful, but we were able to do that. And
so you're balancing essentially two businesses that are in the same industry but kind of not. Like one's a tourism destination and if you just look at the pictures, it was always in just this immaculate shape like you wouldn't believe. Like
we had a very good crew out there. We're fortunate to have some wonderful people who were able to put that together. But the same old story, we after work, we would go and get plants out of the greenhouse and go out and plant with flashlights at night. Seriously, those are the things you had to do to be able to bring it up to speed. So it was tough. When we got the conservatory built and the restaurant finding where we wanted. The wedding business was great. It gave us revenue at a different time of day and so on. The biggest challenge we had with the gardens was that it was seasonal. And the fact that we did not have that consistent flow over the winter. And how do you keep people that you really want to be able to have on a seasonal basis? So we had to make sure we had our key people there all the time. And so for many years, Expo 86 happened. That was our first year we had black because of the number of people coming to Vancouver on tours and so on. That was the first year, and then the next year, back. So the business was successful if it would have been year-round, but it had to subsidize by our other business for those months. But overall, there's so many wonderful things. The gardens, we continually get letters to people who have passed away saying how much they love the gardens, and it meant a lot to our community and so on. So it was many good things. Malcolm Forbes, for example, because we had a relationship with the Minister of Tourism. One of the ministers who lived in Kamloops met Malcolm Forbes. He was a motorcycle buff. The two of them drove down. So I spent an afternoon with Malcolm Forbes going to the gardens, and many people like that. My daughter is sure that you saw Mr. Bean there. So, but no, the great things that it has done for the community and people, and so that was an amazing
really
thing.
Like Chilliwack was not seen as a tourism destination before you did Minter Gardens. And through that transition, it's become a real going concern. And your just championing for the local tourism has been a mainstay through your whole career. I know you closed the Minter Gardens in 2013. Was that an emotional, or was it just time and you felt like there's another chapter
it was,
here?
I think for all of us, very emotional. We have to, as all families do, look at succession planning. What is that going to look like down the road? And both our daughters said that they they grew up in it. They were
Right.
like I was in starting the business. They've been involved for a long time, and both of them are business graduates. They knew their stuff, and they said, no, we can't grow. We need to grow our main business with the garden. So it was a really difficult decision, but it was one that was ultimately the right decision. Yeah, for me it was very emotional, but because I
And
had a
at the
relationship
height
with every
of-
plant there. Right.
Right. At the height of Minter Gardens, how many seasonal workers would there be?
I would say 45 to 50,
Wow.
and then plus a lot of the restaurant people as we get going. So it was
And then on the garden center at that time, how many folks?
about the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have an organization of 90 people. And my feeling, and probably others in the room's feeling, is that if I go to the garden center today and I'm looking at a plant, Brian will pop up and tell me everything about that plant and probably help me load it into the trunk.
Yep.
And everybody else that works there is just as committed, it seems. Like, how have you created this culture of excellence?
Well, it's a question. First of all, you have to have a passion. It is a family thing for what you're doing. You have to love it. You have to love people and to be able to know that for them to have success, you have to do that little bit extra, which is always so very important. And to me, it was. I just get up in the morning and just love to get going. We were very fortunate to have so many wonderful people who shared that vision, and were very good at looking after people, at caring people, but the whole thing, it's a small business, but it's a family business. It's part of our community. You get to know your people. It wasn't one-time customers. There was relationships you built over the seasons. And the other thing is that which we often never talk about is I know so many of the elders there today that come into the store, the older folks. I remember them when they were so kids, so generations of family keep coming along, and it's we've been a part. We're very fortunate to be a part of this community, and us be a part of their lives as well. When we did our light show, we started that whole issue,
Right.
Looking at the back and so on. We did have almost 1 million lights. It was a great show. It's that's me again, right? We did have it.
No halfway.
We had trains running through, and
Yeah.
a drive-through was one unique, and it was very successful. But again, in a smaller community, it just didn't. The dynamics of it didn't work, because our garden crew were the ones that actually set the lights up, and they were very good at it. So, but it's those types of things you try. How do you learn unless you're out trying, doing these types of things? So we still have the lights today. We put around and inside, and we're kind of revisioning where we want to go with the whole issue. But it's not just selling plants. It's about being part of the community, being part of people's lives, and we deal with them at birth. We deal them when a family member would pass away, and marriages and so on like that. So we sort of get the whole spectrum. It's very unique in that business. I don't think another type of business has that.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I've put on the screen one of the books you've written. And now it makes sense to me, knowing your background and English degree and love for writing. And so you've really married that. And one of the things I put in the teaser for this event was that you were an influencer before that was a thing, and really have kind of captured the power of media to spread your message, your joy for gardening, your knowledge, and in a roundabout way, promote what you're doing. Talk to me about being an author, a radio host, a columnist, all of that. Like, where did that come from?
You get asked to do things, and the first time was Bill Wolf at local CHWK, one of the early folks involved in the radio station, asked me, 'cause I did things in high school that were kind of cool and get on there, and that sort of started, and Bill Coombs was also instrumental in getting me on the program, and some of the Vancouver folks as well. Gary Bannerman, for example, in CKNW asked me to come on the program, and other well-known folks. So you had a chance to go out. You weren't married to anybody, but you're able to share information and give people kind of good stuff. And I've been with CBC. I had to interview for CBC when one of the hosts left, and I thought, my goodness, I'll never get this. And to compete with people like somebody like David Tarrant, who's a good friend of mine and a wonderful person, I thought, this is a no-brainer. I'm not going to get this. And so I was called. And 1985, we started with doing segments on CBC, open line show once a week, and that's varied.
So were you driving to Vancouver and going to the studio?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for a half hour, depending on the program. But and also doing a lot of writing. I wrote industry. I spoke a lot in the industry, and it was, so I had all the major magazines in our industry would write for those folks as well, which is good. And of course the local papers, which you appreciated being able to do those comments. And then one of the major writers in Vancouver, newspapers are somewhat challenged today in terms of revenue. They made a change, and I've got a phone call while I write for the Vancouver Sun. Well, that was, in terms of writing, that was absolutely wonderful. It's both good and deadly, because 1,000 words a week plus images, that's every week, right?
That's every week.
And your time's due. But this afternoon I spoke to the folks who do all the floral decor for the Oscars and for the Golden Globes and so on in Los Angeles, made relationships with them to understand. And last week I was talking to a lady in England who's coming out, being brought out here as a designer, and you get to meet so many incredible people through those relationships. And in terms of radio, I was asked to do the BBC in Britain.
Wow.
So for 5 years, I would be sitting in Chilliwack on Skype, doing a program in London, and answering questions in Dubai or Australia or wherever.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when I have some stuff to take to the dump, I borrow my dad's truck. And for that half an hour, I feel really smart because he always has CBC on. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm doing that dump run, I'm getting gardening tips from Brian Minter. So once upon a time, he used to drive into Vancouver, go to the studio.
Yeah.
Today, do you have a bit of a setup at the office, or how are you doing
when
that?
I broke my neck last year, I wasn't allowed to drive.
Okay.
I fought that a lot. But anyway, so we said we should do it on Skype. And they says, well, we don't think we want to do it on Skype. And I says, well, excuse me, the BBC in England does it by Skype.
Right.
You don't think Chilliwack and Vancouver, we'll give it a try. And now they said, well, gee, we should have done that years ago. So, okay. But CBC has been wonderful, and it's been great. The book, though, different story. It was something that it takes a true commitment. You every night after work until late in the morning, you would be working on this book and writing and trying to get it right. And I had a fellow who cleaned up my language at CBC, a fellow I know there, so he did help clean it up. And then I went to the editor. And the worst thing in the world is, after you've gone through this nightmare, weeks, months, getting it done, an editor phones up and said, "Hi, I'm your editor. We're going to do this thing all over again." Right?
Wow.
So it was tough, but a good response on the book. There's many garden stores in America that use that as their manual for their staff. And so it was good play, but a lot of hard work and knowledge and shared knowledge from so many people.
Wow. Here's a couple photos of the garden center.
Yep.
And when you say garden center, you may think, in a strip mall, a little 2,000 square feet. Yep. How many acres do you have on that property?
We do have combined 30 acres now, just under 30 acres. And when Faye and I were very young, travel is very important to kind of learn what other people do in the world. We went to Germany and to see the first, there was a tour out of the DuPage School of Horticulture in Chicago. And we had a relation that they said, look, we need, you guys need to go on this tour. So we saw some of the best garden stores in England, and we saw the first ever garden store in Germany. It was a destination garden store, a brand new concept. And so we went and took a look, and it was out of the major urban area, and people would come. It included a restaurant, it included all the facilities, it was large. So it was the first of the world's destination garden stores. And so we buried that in the back of our mind in thinking that, in time, that should be the type of facility that will have a long-standing ability to be able to grow because of the diversity of what it is and it's a destination. So that's what we saw that. So over time we were building towards this and interesting story is we were on Hope River Road.
Right, I remember
there.
that.
And I got a phone call from an accountant in town saying, Brian, you probably don't want to, you want to be involved in this. The acreage next door where we are now was going on sale and going for sale, but it's a court sale. And so you have basically until 2 o'clock this afternoon to put an offer in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have debt to service on Minter Gardens.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and no shaky hand.
No, we didn't
on
have
when...
a lot of things. So my first phone call was to Bernie Proft, and I said, Bernie, this is the situation. And he goes, you again?
So Bernie was CEO of First Heritage, which became Envision Financial.
Yes, and, yeah, he was such a true prince of a person. Anyway, but Bernie said, Brian, I've gone to the board, and this is how much you can have. And this is the all we can give you, and but you have to wait. This was in December. You have to wait till the end of January before this can close, and so on. And of course, all this is happening right now. So we put our bid in, and this is where we are right now. And at 2 o'clock, the bids were opened, and we had the highest bid. And then the judge said, well, wait a minute here now, because there's 2 bids, I think it was probably not fair. We're going to have a second bid offer at 3 o'clock. And so we had to go back so we had saved a little bit just in case of a situation like this. So all the chips on the table, 3 o'clock, we put everything we could possibly do, but we couldn't close until January 31st. Bids opened at 3 o'clock. Yeah, and I'd never been in a courtroom before. This is all taking place in a courtroom. And the fellow, the judge looked it up and said, we still had the highest bid, but we couldn't close until January 31st. And if you looked at the other offer, because they could close earlier, it's going to go to them. So from yay to oh my gosh to whatever. And then suddenly the courtroom boomed open, and a lawyer came in and said, Your Honor, my client, who actually is going to lose money on this whole situation, thinks he should have a right to, to have some say in who would get it. And so he said that...
You have a flair for the dramatic.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're describing movie scenes here.
I'm not kidding. And so he phoned his client and said, look, he's on the phone while all this is going on. And he said that, what would your client want? So he's on the phone and he read both offers and so on like that. And he said, we'd like to give it to the Minters because they've done so much for the community, and we think that they're, we would like them to have that property. And
wow.
So we went from, yay to, oh my gosh, to, yay. And then, so another new adventure started, getting it going, because we had another garden store in Sardis, which opened up because when the freeway was built, we decided that we were losing Sardis business, so we built a store over there as well, which is kind of cool. So we're doing a lot of things going on at the same time.
Talk to me about tourism, Chilliwack, tourism as a destination, or Chilliwack as a destination, and your involvement in the local tourism industry.
Well, back in the very early days, Chamber of Commerce, tourism was under Chamber of Commerce, and I just having an interest in tourism, we looked after tourism. We did a community-wide, all through the valley-wide, what were we called, and so we did this survey, and Rainbow Country came up.
Right.
So that's where that originated, and a lot of businesses still have that name and so on. But then the Chamber and Tourism, it just sort of fell apart a bit. And then there was a new organization that started with the Economic Development Association. And our marketing person was Brian Coombs, who was, we're just so fortunate to have him. He was amazing. They were going to start tourism as well, and they wanted Brian to run it. So we lost an amazing person. And so he, in fact, became tourism, and they had a great board, and everything it was great. So it was going, And then I got approached by the Board of Tourism, and Brian saying down the road, we'd like you to be a member of the board, if you wouldn't mind. And I was quite honored because I have a passion for tourism. And so as in very short order, I was able to be chair of the board, and Brian was amazing to work with, and you could see a new change and a new reality of where tourism was going. And it was pretty exciting times in terms of that.
Yeah, because through that organization and the efforts of everybody, Chilliwack has been transformed from a truck stop,
Yes,
to a drive-by, to really this amazing gem, right?
yeah, and it was a process, but Brian and the board could see beyond. Tourism is not spending money to bring people into the community. Tourism is working with the partners within a community who are already doing an outstanding job of bringing them, but to help coordinate and facilitate all the things. So it becomes a way of broadening the perspective, using all of synergistic resources and making that happen. And it's continuing on that pathway today. So it really is amazing. And because of how we do things and respect you probably see the welcoming figures. We worked with First Nations. That was our project for our last major event in Canada. And because of what we did and our ability to work and understand and learn from our First Nations peoples, we won the top British Columbia Award for tourism that year. And it's simply understanding that your First Nations are important and all they bring to the table, and so many other entities as well. So when you start going into the farming community and all the circle farm tours and all the entities that make our community, and whether you're in tourism or not, it's looking at that broader picture, and suddenly it begins to change. And Chilliwack, we knew from Minter Gardens, it's very hard to get people out of Vancouver. But by going after different venues, all our mountain biking and our hiking trails we have, and our natural resources that are now becoming, and it's because people are doing biking and mountain biking, we fit. So it's finding the fits that work for your community, and so it's very passionate about that and its future, because we're only going to grow.
Along the way, you've mentioned being on the board of Tourism Chilliwack, but you've also been on the board, still are, of both tourism and SEPCO, the Chilliwack Economic Partners.
Yes,
and UFV, the Board of Governors, and BCAA. Tell me about your BCAA experience.
Another game changer in my life, essentially. It was, I'm always at the store helping people, and I was helping a fellow put some plants in his car, and he said, "Brian, I want to talk to you." And he was a very well-to-do member who was on the board of BCAA. And it's a pretty neat organization. It was at that time over 800,000 British Columbians are members, and it's over 1 million today. And he said, I'm kind of watching you, and I have a disease now that's going to disable me, and I'm going to have resigned from the board. I'd like to put your name forward. And I didn't, think that was very thoughtful and very nice. But then I got a call to go in for an interview to BCA, and had some sense of a depth and the breadth of the organization. And again, I didn't think I did well in the interview, but anyway, I got a call to join that board, and what a remarkable game changer, because it takes you into a different world of a very large, very well-run organization. And CAA in Canada is an offshoot of the American Automobile Association.
Because this is not like an advisory council. This is a
major
corporation. You have
huge in
fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah.
You're driving a multi-million dollar
and
organization.
insurance especially.
Right.
And of course in travel, and of course rescuing people and being a leader in terms of how people travel with cars, and that whole relationship is it's a big conglomerate from that perspective. But what I really learned there is when you're on the board, it's remarkable. But when you're put in charge of certain areas, one of my favorites is governance. I really didn't understand the depth and breadth of governance, and so in terms of being able to do that, it's the inner workings of how everything moves, and when something happens, how do you react to it? For example, if we have an earthquake, in our insurance company, we have to have all our resources in another part of the province or another part of the country to go on. Our CEO and any of his major, I would say, executive cannot travel together, because if something happens to one, something happens to the other. And a major interruption, we have to be able to flow nicely. When any situation, anywhere, members, it's our job to be able to help them and get them out, and dealing with insurance and so on. But it was very interesting. The travel industry was the biggest one that we had. It's our largest and most profitable business. And you know that whole era where, of course, you book your own flights right now on the internet and so on.
Yep.
And the major companies, airlines and essentially cruise ships, are not giving out commissions anymore. And we made a decision as a board with a good CEO to get out of travel. And we were very much not liked by the rest of the Canadian and the American in particular. They were very against what we did. But today they're all out of travel. They saw the writing on the wall and so on like that. So working with people like that, I have a vision of where you're going. And the chief executive officers, the financial officers, the human relations officer, when you're on an HR committee or the chair, you have to work very hard to understand the breadth and depth of what you're doing. And just for example, in governance, they sent me on a 10-week course. It was $1,000 a day.
Wow.
For this course. It was once a week. And but Canada leads the world in governance. And some of the people we have and come and teach us were the president of the Bank of Montreal flew out to teach a course. And that's the depth and level of people we have. And little things that would come up. For example, when you're in these groups, and I tell you this, I'm kind of the junior in these groups here. They're pretty amazing. One of my favorite stories is there was about these race cars, for example, that were going to go on a race. This young couple had this really good car, but it didn't work well in cold weather, and the O-rings would not function properly. So they were getting lots of sponsors. So the question was, do they go ahead in this race and risk everything, or do they, back off and grow slowly? Well, virtually everybody said, yeah, go for it. That because it makes sense. The opportunity, the risk management is what they looked at. And then the instructor said, well, you know what? This wasn't a race car. It was the Space Shuttle Columbia. And that same situation came up. It was about the rings. And the lesson was really about the chain of command.
Wow.
Who has the ability to stop something when they know it's right. And the engineer that said, no, this can't happen, was overridden by the next level and so on. Changed the dynamics of a lot of governance and how things work. So in other words, right now in NASA, that the engineer says, no, it stops there. And so these are the interesting, amazing things that you learn.
Well, I serve on the Chilliwack Economic Partners board with Brian, and pretty much there's a point in every meeting where Brian will very politely raise his hand and say, have you guys thought about this from this perspective? And everybody wasn't thinking about it from that perspective, but it's your depth of governance, knowledge and understanding is remarkable. So, and you bring that to these meetings.
Well, thank you, but it's so very important. It really is, and it's something that I think all corporations and small business in particular have to understand what governance really is and what it means. And so it was it's a wonderful experience. That's just one of the many things you learn in that area.
You talked about throughout our conversation, it's not me, it's we.
Yeah.
And you are a family-owned business, and I've got a photo here of 3 generations of Minters.
Yeah.
How have you struck that balance? Because from the outside looking in, you're going a million miles an hour, running this thing, but also somehow struck a balance.
Yeah. It's unfortunate for Faye and our 2 daughters that we never have had balance. Talk about dysfunctional. We both Lisa is a business graduate from UFV and very, very good at what she does. And when she graduated, she went to the America's leading garden center group in the East Coast of the USA, and worked with each of the families over time to get experience in how the top notch in North America really work. And so she is, because of that, she sort of understands what it's about. She's a lot more balanced than I am, but she is also the only Canadian ever involved in the American Hort Board that runs horticulture in America, because they recognized her skill set. Erin worked with graduated from UBC, and she was a consultant, HR consultant, lived in Montreal and was flying all over America, leave Friday, I guess Sunday night to be somewhere Monday morning, and would fly back on Friday night to Montreal, and a very lonely life, but she learned so much about HR and various companies and so on. We were actually blessed to have both of them in our business right now. But from a large scale, they understand what business is about. And and Faye, too, has put up with me for all these years. But, I mean, she's still the backbone of the business. So we work as a team very, very well. And, yes, we know all need to spend more time together. But we're fortunate we have a relationship in business as well as personal. And But it is tough. There's no question. To be successful in business today, you really have to have total focus and concentration. Lisa right now is in Europe with our granddaughter, doing all our buying with some of the major corporations for Christmas and spring of next year.
Wow.
And so on.
That far in advance.
That far in advance, yeah. So
and how big is the total Minter Country Gardens crew these days?
We're in full season. We're getting close to 50 people. Yeah, both growing and retailing. And it's hard to do both, but from our perspective, how can you find all these new and amazing, wonderful plants all over the world if you can't get them?
Right.
And by going and traveling and finding new and different things and doing a lot of reading, you're able to find it. And that's what people are looking for. The change in, for example, tropical plants. We always look at the millennials. They were the kind of the generation that never had plants, never wanted plants, and within 1 year, and I've traveled around North America and Europe, telling our peers that they're different. You have to watch this very carefully, and you have to nurture them and so on. And but now all of a sudden we can't buy plants. Our shelves are empty because in North America, 40 to 50% of all the tropicals are being by millennials, a group that never touched it.
Wow.
So the demand is good.
And I imagine things like taking a picture so you can put it on Instagram is driving the need for these really unique...
Absolutely. If you don't treat them well or have new things for them, because we have such wonderful people who are able to source things that you have to have those plants. And
Right.
And they will tweet out or image out whatever they have. This is a place to get them. So it's and we have a lot of followers, influencers who we look after and do neat things with them to share the passion and get people involved. So it's a totally different marketing group today, and our daughters are very much attuned to that, and we work hard to be able to as things are change along quickly.
Immigration.
Yes.
I did not know that you are involved in immigration. Tell us about that.
Well, in a capacity
Right.
that because of having the Order of Canada, I am able to, or everybody is able to induct Canadians into citizenship, to get them the oath of citizenship. And I got to tell you, that is, for me, another game changer. To be able to look in people's eyes. It started in Mission. The Mission had a day, a celebration that they wanted to induct new Canadians in their region into citizenship, and they found out that I could do that. So, because usually you have a federal judge would be the person doing this. And so you have to follow a very careful protocol and be very fluent in French. So my stepmother was a French teacher, so I had some help in those days, but I had a coach to help me. But to quite genuinely look in people's eyes, and there's quite a few of those people out there, and you could see some of the pain and suffering in those eyes that from a different country, they didn't have the best life in the world, and they have tears in their eyes as they're you're giving them the oath of citizenship, and it's for me quite remarkable. It makes you appreciate the depth and breadth of the people in our country, It's more about Canada is so wonderful to maintain the resources and the culture of so many different people as they come to our country. That makes us richer. And you never have the experience when you're actually there shaking their hand, welcome to as a new Canadian in our country. And that's pretty moving, it is.
And you've done this more than once.
Yes, quite a few. In a couple of weeks, I'm doing it again in Surrey again. So, yeah,
Wow.
I've done it over time, yeah. It's like when they ask you, like, wow, will you do this? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Mentorship.
Yeah.
Have you had mentors during your career?
Very, very fortunate to have mentors, and I would consider Bernie Proft as one. He was always, watched over us in a very nice way. And when Bernie was replaced, the new CEO came to see me as well, Gordon Houston, and built relationships with them because they weren't just bankers; they're teachers and helping you to be able to grow and learn more about where business is going and from their perspective. But there's a Saskatchewan fellow who moved out from Saskatchewan, bought a major gardening conglomerate in Burnaby, and Greenleaf Garden Supplies, and his name was Bev Hadley. And he just he took a liking to me, and he has been my major mentor. You come up to him with ideas, and he said, "Really? You want to think this through a bit?" And so he was outstanding in terms of just coaching and nurturing, and you have those, me especially, right? I think we can conquer the world by noon tomorrow. He says, well, maybe it's going to take a little longer.
Did you just fall into these relationships,
yes.
or did you
They actually came to me and said, you're pretty good, but you're a little stupid, so we're going to help you out a little way here.
So for those in the audience who are watching this, how would you say to get involved, get a mentor? Like, what are the steps?
In many cases today, I think it's up to each of us to find somebody we would admire and help along the way and nurture as well. Go looking for those people because you have no idea how much pleasure it gives them to be able to train and help people. And so it's absolutely essential. And I think as you live your life, do the right things the right way and give it everything you have plus and basically, and it's not about yourself, it's about your broader community and other people in the world, and so that's what they respect and look for. It's not just somebody who's going to go and do one thing particularly well. It's the broader picture that is always very important. One of the another mentor I had is Ernest Wertheim. It took me 5 planes to get to his birthday party. He had his 100th birthday party in Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
And I was there for 3 hours and I left again because that man taught me so much. He was a Jewish a member of, as the Hitler came in and lost most of his family, and he was shot at as he was able to get out of Germany. He'd written a book, by the way. We all encouraged him to write this book, and he is just remarkable. He was going to go back to Germany and be sent to parachute in, and his plane was, he was taken off the plane and sent to Australia because General MacArthur needed him for advice and so on. These are the type of people that you run about. He would phone me and said, Brian, I'm going to Europe and taking clients in 5 days. You need to be there. So with those people, you drop everything and say, yeah, please. His only request is, and this is when he was 80, he'd say, you keep up with me. And I'm not kidding, because he never slept. He was just, and the type of person who really made you think. You get in the car in the morning and say, good morning, Ernest, what a lovely day. He says, why do you say that? And he was an interrogator during the war. I mean, you can understand why, but he made you stop and he made you think. Don't open your mouth unless you really have something important to say and you can back it up. So those are the type of people that shape your existence, and mentors are incredibly important.
The importance of education, it's been a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
I've got a photo of here. I think you were getting a degree, a doctorate from the university. You've been the chancellor of the Board of Governors. What role has education played in your life?
It was always very precious to me in terms of being able to learn, particularly in high school. And so in going into university, it's not easy, it's tough, but it's so rewarding. And I think you have certain instructors who along the way will, they'll capture imagination and want you to try and do better. But no, it just as a, I just love, I was not involved in universities, but it just so happened that I was put on the board. Boy, a new love affair started right there, because just learning about our university was a college at that time.
Yeah.
And,
was it Fraser Valley College at the time?
Yes, Fraser Valley College.
So you saw it through the transition to a university college and then ultimately to a full-blown university.
Yes, and I was chairman of the board when we were a college, and we wanted to become a university college, which was at the time was opposed by the major universities. They thought, what are these people anyway? What's this hybrid going? And I remember Peter Jones was our president at the time, and you learn so much from great people like Peter and a whole bunch of other. We've been fortunate to have those leaders in the community. But I remember being in the minister's office of advanced education in Victoria. And we pleaded our case in terms of, just how important this was and how it would help the people in our community. And we learned that people are not very, people in Agassiz are intimidated by Chilliwack. And so it was just an opportunity, particularly for women, to be able to have new careers and advance themselves. This is what we were fighting for. And the minister said, there's no way this is going to happen. And I said, excuse me, minister, you're totally wrong. This will happen. He was let go as minister within a few weeks. And fortunately, because of my relationships with other people who were put in place, I had relationships with, and minister, and because of the support of this community and whatever, we were able to change that to a university college. And the next step was obviously, and the support of the community that did that as well, we became a university. So it was interesting times, and it's such a wonderful place, and what it brings to the community, its culture is beyond. And I've had some from a student I used to teach there, and we raised funds for the university, and we did so many. So I've kind of been having that fortunate position to be so closely connected to it in so many different ways that it was just a part of my life, and I couldn't imagine it not being here. But from the instructors to the leaders of each part of the community and at the university, and all they do, it's truly amazing, and people are remarkable. Fundraising is interesting because it's a government thing. Why do you need funding? And funding is easier the closer you get to major urban areas, and out in the valley it's tougher. It's not in the highest priority of this, but to be able to go to people's homes and talk to them about why it's important and so on, it gave you again a sense of what the community is, where the university needs to move to be I guess more understanding of the individuals, how we can make friends first and then fundraise. That's always been very interesting, but it's been a big part of my life.
I remember hearing the phrase, I think it was London Life coined it, Freedom 55.
Yeah.
That should be the goal. You get to 55 and then you take the box out of the office and then you go on these cruises and so forth.
Yeah, really.
That's not been your MO whatsoever.
No.
You drive passion and vibrance, and just your whole life is driving all of these different initiatives, whether it's volunteerism or your business or so forth. Where does that come from? Because you said your dad said, I dropped the hose at 65, I'm out of here. Yeah,
because for him, it was his time, and I totally respect and appreciate that. For me, it was, I'm not there yet. We have so many things on the go. The industry is changing so dramatically, quickly, and to be able to grow in the future, you just have to. I was at one of the major corporations I've done a lot of favors for, asked me to go to Europe with them last year to visit some of the leading entities and garden stores and greenhouses in Europe, and the large Essen show in Germany. It's on right now, as a matter of fact. And Europe is so far ahead of us in every respect in our industry. To be able to go and see and understand and make relationships over there, that inspires you to see how much more we could do and how much better we can be and how much more efficient, how we can connect to other people. And so that resulted in one little thing over there. I was looking at European garden benches at the show, and we, because of that, my daughter Lisa was involved in horticulture in America. She was at the Hort Show, saw the same ones, and we have 2 containers just arrived from Italy of the latest garden center design benches that facilitate new displays, merchandising and so on, new experience and so on. So that never ends. And we're investing a lot of resources into those types of things because we believe in the business. And, you know, it's not okay just to be okay. And if you want to grow and be part of that community and be a leader in the community, it takes everything you possibly have to do that.
Well, I'm cognizant of the time. We're going a little bit long, but I could talk to you forever. I've got a couple other things I want to talk specifically about. If we circle back to the garden store, you have carved out a premium brand from an outsider's perspective, in a somewhat commoditized business. So you see Home Depot pop up, or Walmart, and they tack on, or Canadian Tire and so forth, and yet here you are, employing 50-plus people, driving a very premium business. People go there for service quality. They're not going there for a super deal. How do you think you've accomplished that?
We have a long way to go still. One thing is the Canadian Garden Council named us the Destination Garden Center of the Year for Canada. And so it's nice to have outside recognition, but we know that's takes a lot more than that. It's really understanding the role you play in it. Going back to early days, what role do you play in this community? Home Depot is a very, very good company, a very aggressive company, and at our Sardis store, we had a Walmart open right next door.
Right.
And their opening day, we couldn't get people in our garden store parking lot because they're all Walmart customers. And Lisa was managing the store, and she was telling me what's going on. And then she came back and said, "Dad, you don't have to worry at all." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, I asked politely several of those folks if they, it's our parking lot. Go to a Walmart parking lot," and said the abuse that they heaped on me, and said, "Those aren't our people. Our people are the people who care, love what they're doing, part of our community in a big way." And so we knew from that comment from Lisa, a very insightful comment, that we believe in our community, we want to grow, but we also want to be a leader. We want to be a leader in British Columbia. We want to be a leader in Canada. We want to be a leader in the world in terms of, and you can only do that if you assimilate all these different types of things in different ways. And, our management techniques need to change, and how we work with people needs to change. And, but I think we're well equipped to move forward.
Last topic. And you've mentioned a few different associations you've been involved in, but you've organized some major conferences and been a part of major conferences. Talk to me about that experience. Another
game changer is I'm with Garden Writers of America. It's a huge organization of everybody writes and communicates in gardening. They needed to have a conference, for example, first time out of America, and they asked me if I would put it on in Vancouver. Now, they do a lot of the legwork because they have a very good executive director and so on. So we I took this on. I thought, wow, what a great team. I contacted people I know and have a passion for them in terms of what they're good at what they do. And we also asked the Tourism Vancouver for a little bit of tourism, and both Tourism BC, but for their help. And they heard all they heard was the word writer. And they said, "Move over, Sonny, we're going to help you. We're going to show you how to do this." They gave us a person who taught me virtually everything. We would how everything was laid out, where the buses would be at particular time. It had to be absolutely exact, and there's no room for any mistake. And it's just it's one of those events. So we would go to every venue that was going to go out. And we would stop, time it perfectly. This fellow who was just remarkable got out and said, okay, what's the experience going to happen here? What's going to be here? So he went to a lavender farm at the time, and they were going to look at lavender. He says, Brian, that's not enough. He said, so what else do you folks do? And so he said, well, we have lavender ice cream. Okay, we got to give everybody lavender ice cream. And how about lavender foot massages for the ladies in particular and stuff like that? So he was able to bring every venue, provide so much more than was there. And so it was that whole learning experience, the timing to get things right, to the convenience. And the other thing is that caring about people. Right in the middle of things, I get calls from people from Texas. We heard about there's an Italian ice cream place out here. Can you take us? Here I am trying to balance everything. I said, jump in the car, we're going to go. And so you have to taste every flavor, like, really? You guys move along here? Oh, yeah. But we did, and they gave me a big hug and said that was great. 20 years later, they gave me the highest award in garden writing, the Hall of Fame award. And when they mentioned that this conference, they all got up and it was the best conference they'd ever had.
Wow.
So just learning about people and the things you have to do, and the diversity and what it means about showcasing, going back to tourism. And that's what that fellow taught me, is whatever you do, how can you make it more? Those are the things. Then the bus captains, they're all comedians, right? Everybody was laughing, had a wonderful time. It took it to the next level. And so those are the things you pick up, and each conference you do, you learn so much more. There's some Polish people at another conference that could not speak any English, so I tried to find people who spoke Polish to be able to help them. And so at the very last day, he got lost. I couldn't communicate with him, and then I got him back, and then she got lost, and so on. Anyway, I did this the whole trip. They were wonderful folks. Anyway, at the end, he picks me up, lifts me off the ground, hug, thank you. So, the individual response and the good it does our community, those are things that are super important. How can you not love that? And going to South Africa to have to give a speech about why they should come to British Columbia was cool. And the one thing that I'll never forget this, that was there at the presentation, because I got a hold of Tourism BC. I says, give me some stuff here. I need some stuff. And the one thing is, they came to see me afterwards, was a young lad skating on a lake that was frozen. He was the only person there. And for the world to see this one lad, it was by mistake, they told me. The helicopter was doing all the shooting, and they just didn't get anything, but they saw this one lad, and they zoomed in on him out in the escape. That drew silence in the room. They had no idea what Canada was, and so it was it was kind of cool. So how do you learn all this stuff? It's by getting involved and speaking to the people and working with the people who have the best skills. So yeah.
Well, we sure appreciate your time today. Let's give a big round of applause for Brian Minter.
Thank you.